How would you design an Indian nation essentially that would last 3,000 years from now? How can a nation grow indefinitely without collapsing like Rome or the Cholas? That's an interesting question. Do we know of any nation or geopolitical entity or any other such entity that has existed for 3,000 years? We know of civilizations that have existed longer. We are the oldest continuously existing civilization that still exists. We Indians. India is the oldest continuously existing civilization. It's not, look, this idea of a nation, that's a pretty recent idea. Historically, we had cultures and civilizations, and we had kingdoms and empires. Nation states is a very recent idea. It's an artificial kind of idea. I'm not sure how long it will last. Yesterday I did a podcast live stream with Dr. Gautam Desiraju, and he says that the age of empires is upon us again, and we're going to have four empires going forward, which is the US, China, Russia, and India. So the nation state system is an experiment, a temporary experiment. It will not last uh, very long. So, in that sense, I do concur with what Dr. Desiraju said yesterday. I agree with what he said. So, nations are an artificial entity. Kingdoms and empires, that's something that historically has existed. So, let's say you want an empire that lasts 3,000 years. Well, the first question you ask yourself is, has there ever been an empire that lasted 3,000 years? The answer is no. Okay. We've had dynasties that lasted like 2,000 years. The Cholas lasted almost 2,000 years as a dynasty. Uh, Definitely more than 1,000 years. When you look at the Roman Empire, it lasted about let's say 1,500 years. And some people will be surprised because you would imagine that Rome kind of disintegrated around 500 roughly AD, right? But that's the Western Roman Empire. The Eastern Roman Empire, based out of Constantinople, lasted until the 15th century. It did decline later, and it was overrun by the Turks eventually. But Rome, as an imperial entity, lasted about 1,500 years. So, yeah, 1,500 years, something can last. What about Egypt? The Egyptian Empire, you can say it lasted 2,000 plus years. So, it's something that's possible. So, yeah, there is some historical precedent, but if you're talking about 3,000 years, you're kind of pushing the boundaries of what has historically occurred in the past. With all that said, if you want not a nation but an empire that lasts 3,000 years, first of all, it needs to have a very strong cultural and civilizational scaffolding or superstructure that it builds upon. It needs a basis, a long term basis, which is its civilizational identity and cultural identity. So that's something we have. That's an advantage we have. We have a culture civilization that's probably 10,000 or more years old, right? So that's one great advantage we have. The Chinese have a similar advantage. Their culture may be 5,000 plus years old, perhaps. Yep. And nobody else has that sort of standing, long lasting culture or civilization. So we already have that. So then we need political stability. So you need a political system that ensures there is stability even after transitions from one leader to the next. And obviously, the system should be such that it picks the right leader whenever a transition happens. When leader A, Emperor A, becomes old, let's say he or she is in his 70s, 80s, and it's time to move on to the next leader, then the system should pick the best possible next leader, which means that there should not be nepotism, which generally in empires you have the eldest son or the best son who takes the throne or the crown going forward. But ideally you want it to be non-nepotistic. So the system has to be such that it will always pick the best possible successor, so that the right things keep on happening, strengthening the military, strengthening focusing on the right things like science and technology, strengthening culture, all of that. So you need to have a system that takes care of all these things. So what do you need? You need a strong civilizational scaffolding, which we have. You need a great education system that teaches the citizens the right values and critical thinking and all of that, science, technology, and culture, all of that. You need that. That's what we don't have. So that's one thing that needs to be created. Our education system is one of the worst in the world today. Then you need a civilization language, one language, okay, not 78 languages and all that nonsense. You need one language that is the supreme language, and all other languages are subsidiary. That's how it works in an empire. Okay, democracy doesn't really work too much, too well. Democracy creates, disintegration. So you need a hybrid democracy, like Dr. Desi Raja was saying yesterday. You need hybrid democracy, a hybrid model. That's what I have been saying for years. Uh, so you need that sort of system. So you need a good education system. You need a civilizational, strong civilizational scaffolding. You need the right system at the top, which is a non-democratic ruler. Because if a ruler has to go and beg to the people every 5 years based on popularity, your country, your empire will never last. You need to pick the right people and let them rule as long as they need to, and then the right sort of succession should happen. So the only way you can have something that lasts 3000 years, if it's possible, is through an imperial system, not a nation state system, or not through democracy. Okay, because historically democracies have never worked. Historically empires have lasted, empires and civilizations. So that's what I would do.